Administrative law is the branch of law that governs the actions, powers, and functions of administrative authorities, government agencies, and officials. It tells us how government bodies should act, what powers they have, and how those powers are controlled to protect citizens. Some well-known jurists have explained it as, according to Ivor Jennings, administrative law deals with the organization, powers, and duties of administrative authorities. According to A.V. Dicey, it relates to the legal principles governing the actions of state officials. 2. Nature of administrative law, its characteristics. Administrative law has the following important features. I. It is a branch of public law. It deals with relations between the government and citizens, not between private individuals. 2. It is concerned with government powers. It explains what powers are given to administrative authorities and how those powers should be used. 3. It controls misuse of power. Administrative law ensures that authorities do not act arbitrarily or unfairly. 4. It is flexible and developing. Unlike rigid laws, administrative law keeps changing according to social needs and government functions. It ensures rule of law. It ensures that no one, including the government, is above the law. 6. It provides remedies. If a citizen's rights are violated by authorities, administrative law provides remedies through courts or tribunals. 3. Scope of administrative law, what it covers. The scope of administrative law is very wide. It includes the following. I. Delegated legislation. Parliament gives power to administrative authorities to make rules and regulations. Administrative law checks whether such rules are valid. 2. Administrative functions. It covers how government departments work in areas like education, health, transport, taxation, etc. 3. Judicial control of administrative actions. Courts supervise administrative actions through writs like mandamus, certiorari, prohibition, etc. 4. Administrative tribunals. Special courts, like tax tribunals, labor courts, decide disputes between government and citizens. Principles of natural justice. These are basic rules of fairness. No one should be a judge in their own case. Both parties must be heard. 6. Government liability. It deals with situations where the government can be held responsible for wrongful acts. 4. Importance of administrative law. Protects citizens from abuse of power. Ensures transparency and accountability. Helps in smooth functioning of government. Balances power between authority and individuals. 5. Case study, simple explanation. Maneka Gandhi v. Union of India, 1978. Facts. The government took away Maneka Gandhi's passport without giving proper reasons. Issue. Whether the government can act without following fair procedure. Judgment. The Supreme Court held that the government must follow fair procedure and cannot act arbitrarily. Meaning in simple words, even the government must act fairly and give reasons before taking action against a person. Importance. This case strengthened the concept of natural justice and fairness in administrative law. 6. Conclusion. Administrative law is essential in modern welfare states where government activities are vast. It ensures that authorities act within limits, follow fairness, and respect citizens' rights. Without administrative law, there would be misuse of power and injustice. Administrative law did not develop suddenly. It grew due to practical needs of modern society. As the functions of the government increased, it became necessary to regulate administrative authorities and control their powers. 2. Reasons factors for the growth of administrative law. I. Growth of welfare state. Earlier, the state followed the concept of police state, limited functions like law and order. But now, It is a welfare state where the government works for public welfare such as education, health, employment, and social security. Because of these increased responsibilities, administrative authorities were created, leading to the growth of administrative law. 2. Increase in government functions. Modern governments perform numerous functions: economic planning, industrial regulation, public services, etc. It is not possible for the legislature to manage everything directly, so powers are given to administrative bodies. Administrative law controls these bodies. 3. Need for delegated legislation. Parliament cannot make detailed laws for every situation. Therefore, it delegates powers to administrative authorities to make rules and regulations. Administrative law ensures that such delegated powers are not misused. 4. Need for expertise and specialization. Many administrative decisions require technical knowledge, example taxation, environment, telecom. Experts in these fields are appointed in administrative bodies. Administrative law regulates their functioning and ensures fairness. Quick decision-making. Courts follow lengthy procedures, which may delay justice. Administrative authorities can take faster decisions. Administrative law ensures that while decisions are quick, they are also fair and lawful. 6. Control of arbitrary power. With increased powers, there is always a risk of misuse. Administrative law provides checks such as judicial review and principles of natural justice to prevent arbitrary actions. Protection of individual rights. Administrative law protects citizens from unfair actions of authorities. It ensures that government decisions do not violate fundamental rights. 8. Development of administrative tribunals. To reduce the burden on courts and provide speedy justice, special tribunals were created. Their functioning is governed by administrative law. 9. Rule of law and accountability. Administrative law ensures that all government actions are based on law and that authorities are accountable for their actions. 3. Simple case illustration. In Maneka Gandhi v. Union of India, 1978, the government restricted a citizen's passport without proper procedure. The Supreme Court held that administrative actions must be fair, reasonable, and follow due process. This case shows why administrative law is necessary to prevent misuse of power and protect individual rights. 4. Conclusion. The growth of administrative law is the result of changing social, economic, and political conditions. As government functions expand, administrative law becomes essential to maintain balance between authority and freedom. It ensures efficiency in administration while safeguarding justice and fairness. Administrative law is the branch of law that controls how government authorities, like departments, officers, agencies, use their powers. It ensures that government actions are legal, fair, and not arbitrary. In simple words, it tells the government, you have power but you must use it properly. 2. Sources of administrative law. Administrative law does not come from one single place. It develops from different sources. 1. Constitution. The Constitution is the supreme source. It defines powers of government authorities and also limits those powers. It protects citizens through fundamental rights and ensures that administration acts within legal boundaries. Example, right to equality prevents arbitrary government action. 2. Statutes, acts of legislature. These are laws made by parliament or state legislatures. They give powers to administrative authorities and define their duties. Example, Right to Information Act allows citizens to access government information. 3. Delegated legislation. Sometimes Parliament gives power to administrative authorities to make detailed rules. This is called delegated legislation. It includes rules, regulations, notifications, and bylaws. Example, traffic rules made by government authorities. 4. Judicial decisions. Courts play a major role in developing administrative law. They interpret laws and check misuse of power. They also establish important principles like natural justice. Example, courts ensure that no person is punished without being heard. 5. Customs and conventions. Long-standing practices followed by administrative authorities also become a source. These are not written laws but are accepted practices. 6. Administrative instructions. Government departments issue circulars, guidelines, and orders to regulate their functioning. These are important for day-to-day administration. 7. International law. International agreements and treaties sometimes influence administrative decisions, especially in areas like environment and human rights. Importance of administrative law. Administrative law is very important in modern governance because government functions have increased greatly. 1. Control over government power. It prevents misuse of power by administrative authorities. It ensures that decisions are lawful and reasonable. 2. Protection of citizens' rights. It safeguards individuals from unfair or illegal actions of government. It provides remedies like approaching courts. 3. Ensures rule of law. It ensures that everyone, including government, is subject to law. No authority is above law. 4. Provides remedies. Citizens can challenge administrative actions in courts or tribunals. Example, writs like mandamus certiorari. 5. Promotes efficiency. It helps administration function smoothly by providing clear rules and procedures. 6. Ensures fairness and justice. It applies principles of natural justice like hearing both sides and avoiding bias. 7. Supports welfare state. Modern governments perform many welfare activities. Administrative law ensures these functions are carried out properly. 4. Case study. Simple explanation. Maneka Gandhi vs. Union of India, 1978. Facts. Maneka Gandhi's passport was taken away by the government without giving proper reasons. She was not given a fair chance to be heard. Issue. Whether the government can act without following fair procedure. Judgment. The Supreme Court held that government actions must be fair, just, and reasonable. It expanded the meaning of procedure established by law. Simple understanding. The court said that government cannot act arbitrarily. It must follow fairness and give opportunity to the person affected. Importance. This case strengthened administrative law by ensuring fairness and protection of individual rights. 5. Conclusion. Administrative law acts as a bridge between government power and individual rights. It ensures that administration works within limits, protects citizens, and maintains justice and fairness. Meaning of the statement. The statement means that administrative law helps in controlling the misuse or arbitrary use of power by government officers. Arbitrary power means acting according to personal will without following rules of fairness. Administrative law ensures that such powers are used within legal limits and in a fair manner. In simple words, it keeps a check on government authorities so that they do not act like masters but remain servants of law. Why administrative officers have wide powers. In a modern welfare state, the government performs many functions like education, health, transport, environment, etc. For this, administrative officers are given wide discretionary powers. Discretion means freedom to take decisions. However, this freedom can be misused if not controlled. Therefore, administrative law becomes necessary. 3. How administrative law controls arbitrary powers. 1. Rule of law. Administrative law is based on the principle of rule of law, which means no one is above law. Every action of administrative authority must be legally justified. If an officer acts without authority, his action can be challenged. 2. Principles of natural justice. These are basic rules of fairness. Times audi altrum partem, hear the other side. Times nemo judex in causa sua, no one should be judge in his own case. These principles prevent unfair and biased decisions. 3. Judicial review. Courts have the power to review administrative actions. If any action is illegal, unreasonable, or against procedure, courts can declare it invalid. This is one of the strongest controls. 4. Reasoned decisions. Administrative authorities must give reasons for their decisions. This prevents arbitrary action and increases transparency. 5. Delegated legislation control. When administrative authorities make rules, the legislature and courts supervise them. If rules go beyond authority, they can be struck down. Remedies to citizens. Citizens can approach courts through writs like habeas corpus mandamus, certiorari prohibition, and quo warranto. These remedies protect individuals from misuse of power. 7. Checks by legislature and ombudsman. Parliamentary committees and institutions like Lokpal also check administrative actions. 4. Case study, simple explanation. Maneka Gandhi vs. Union of India, 1978. Facts: the government took away Maneka Gandhi's passport without giving proper reasons or opportunity to be heard. Issue: whether such action is valid without fairness. Judgment: the Supreme Court held that administrative actions must be fair, just, and reasonable and must follow proper procedure. Simple understanding: the court said that government cannot act on its own will. It must follow fairness and give a chance to the person affected. Importance: this case clearly shows how administrative law controls arbitrary power and protects individual rights. 5. Other safeguards against arbitrary power. Administrative law also ensures that powers are used for proper purpose, not for personal or political reasons. It prevents abuse of discretion and ensures proportionality, meaning punishment or action must match the situation. 6. Conclusion. Administrative law acts as a powerful control mechanism over administrative authorities. It ensures that power is not misused and that decisions are fair, reasonable, and lawful. It protects citizens from arbitrary actions and maintains balance between authority and liberty. Without administrative law, government power could become uncontrolled and harmful. Droit administratif is a French term which means administrative law. It refers to a system of law in France that governs the powers, functions, and liabilities of administrative authorities. In simple words, it is a special set of rules that control government officials and protect citizens from misuse of power. Origin and development. Droit administratif developed in France after the French Revolution. The idea was to separate administrative matters from ordinary courts and give them to special administrative courts. This system aimed to protect public administration and also ensure justice to citizens. Key features of droit administratif. 2. Special laws for administration. Government officials are governed by special rules different from ordinary law. This means administration is subject to a distinct legal system. 3. State liability. Under this system, the state can be held liable for wrongful acts of its officials. Citizens can claim compensation if harmed by administrative actions. Judge-made law. Much of droit administratif is developed by decisions of administrative courts rather than written statutes. 5. Case study, simple explanation. Blanco case, 1873. Facts: a young girl was injured due to negligence of a government factory in France. Issue: whether the state should be liable and which court should decide the case. Judgment: the court held that the state is liable, but the case must be decided by administrative courts, not ordinary courts. Simple understanding: the case established that administrative matters will be governed by special rules and courts. Importance: this case is considered the foundation of droit administratif because it clearly separated administrative law from ordinary law. 6. Conclusion. Droit administratif is a unique system of administrative law developed in France. It provides special courts, distinct rules, and effective remedies to control administrative power and protect citizens. It has influenced administrative law systems in many countries. The doctrine of separation of powers means that the powers of government are divided among three organs: legislature, executive, and judiciary. The legislature makes laws, the executive implements laws, and the judiciary interprets laws. The main aim is to prevent concentration of power in one authority and avoid misuse. In simple words, it means no one organ should do all the work of government. 2. Origin of the doctrine. This doctrine was clearly explained by Montesquieu in his book The Spirit of Laws. He said that liberty can be protected only when powers are separated. If one person or body makes, executes, and judges laws, there is danger of tyranny. 3. Strict separation versus practical approach. In theory, the doctrine requires complete separation. But in practice, complete separation is not possible because government functions are interconnected. Therefore, most countries follow a system of separation with checks and balances, not strict division. 4. Position in India. The Indian constitution does not follow strict separation of powers but provides a functional separation with checks and balances. This means each organ has its own main function, but there is some overlap. 1. Legislature makes laws but also performs some judicial functions like impeachment. 2. Executive implements laws but also has legislative powers through ordinances and delegated legislation. 3. Judiciary interprets laws and can declare laws invalid through judicial review. Thus, the Constitution maintains balance rather than strict separation. 5. Constitutional provisions showing separation. Times Article 50, separation of judiciary from executive. Times Articles 121 and 211, no discussion on conduct of judges in legislature. Times Articles 122 and 212, courts cannot question legislative proceedings. These provisions show that functions are differentiated. 6. Checks and balances in India. Times judiciary can review laws made by legislature. Times executive is responsible to legislature. Times president acts on advice of Council of Ministers. Case study, simple explanation. Keswananda Bharti vs. State of Kerala, 1973. Facts: the government tried to amend the constitution in a way that could reduce judicial powers. Issue: whether Parliament has unlimited power to amend the constitution. Judgment: the Supreme Court held that Parliament cannot destroy the basic structure of the constitution, which includes separation of powers. Simple understanding: the court said that no organ can become too powerful. Every organ must remain within its limits. Importance: this case established that separation of powers is part of the basic structure and cannot be violated. 8. Analysis of the statement. The statement is correct because the Indian constitution does not strictly separate powers like in some countries. However, it clearly divides functions among the three organs and ensures that no organ interferes excessively in the domain of others. Thus, India follows a balanced system where separation exists but is not rigid. 9. Conclusion. The doctrine of separation of powers is essential for protecting liberty and preventing misuse of power. In India, it is not followed in strict form, but the constitution ensures proper division of functions and effective checks and balances. This creates harmony among organs and safeguards democracy. Principle of rule of law, meaning and explanation. The rule of law means that law is supreme and no one is above the law. It ensures that government power is not arbitrary and people are protected from misuse of authority. This concept was mainly explained by A.V. Dicey. Dicey gave three main principles. Supremacy of law: no person can be punished except according to law. Government cannot act arbitrarily. Equality before law. Every person, rich, poor, ruler, citizen, is equal before courts. Predominance of legal spirit. Rights of individuals are protected through courts and judicial decisions. White-right pointing backhand index. Simple example, a police officer cannot arrest anyone without legal reason. Even a minister can be punished if he violates law. B. Contribution to modern administrative law. Administrative law deals with powers of government authorities. Rule of law plays an important role in controlling these powers. Times prevents misuse of power. Authorities must act within legal limits. Times ensures fairness. Principles like natural justice, fair hearing, are applied. Times judicial review. Courts can check illegal actions of administration. Times accountability. Government officials are answerable for their actions. White-right pointing backhand index. Thus, rule of law acts as a foundation of administrative law, ensuring balance between power and liberty. C. Relevant provisions of the Constitution of India. The Indian Constitution strongly supports rule of law through various provisions. Article 14, Equality before law and equal protection of laws. Article 19, Protection of fundamental freedoms, speech, movement, etc. Article 21, Right to life and personal liberty, must follow procedure established by law. Article 32, Right to constitutional remedies, approach Supreme Court. Article 226, High courts can issue writs for protection of rights. Has rule of law blocked growth of administrative law? Critical view. Some argue that strict rule of law limits administrative law, but in reality, heavy checkmark, it does not block growth, it regulates it. Heavy checkmark, administrative law has expanded due to welfare state needs. Heavy checkmark, rule of law only ensures that expansion is fair and controlled. White-right pointing backhand index. Conclusion, it acts as a check, not a barrier. E. Critical note on Dicey's concept. Merits. Times protects individual freedom. Times prevents arbitrary power. Times promotes equality. Demerits, criticism. Times ignores administrative realities. Modern state needs wide powers. Times equality is not absolute, special laws exist. Times overemphasis on courts, ignoring administrative tribunals. White-right pointing backhand index. Today, Dicey's theory is modified to suit modern governance. F. Case study, simple explanation. Maneka Gandhi v. Union of India. Facts, government took away Maneka Gandhi's passport without giving reasons. Issue, was this against rule of law? Judgment, Supreme Court said that procedure must be fair, just, and reasonable. Impact, expanded Article 21 and strengthened rule of law. White-right pointing backhand index. Simple meaning, government cannot act unfairly even if law allows action. G. Conclusion. Rule of law is the backbone of democracy. It ensures fairness, equality, and protection of rights while allowing administrative law to grow in a controlled and just manner. Administrative tribunals are special bodies created to decide disputes related to administration, like service matters, tax, labor, etc. They are not ordinary courts but perform judicial functions. Constitution, formation. In India, tribunals are mainly created under the Constitution through Times Article 323A for administrative tribunals, service matters. Times Article 323B for other tribunals, tax, labor, land reforms, etc. Example, Central Administrative Tribunal, CAT. These tribunals consist of Times judicial members having legal background, Times administrative technical members having subject expertise. Powers of administrative tribunals. Times power to hear disputes and give decisions, quasi-judicial power. Times power to summon witnesses and take evidence. Times power to review their own decisions, limited. Times power to grant relief like reinstatement, compensation, etc. Times follow principles of natural justice, fair hearing. Right pointing backhand index. They function like courts but in a specialized and flexible manner. B. Reasons for growth of administrative adjudication. Administrative adjudication means decision-making by tribunals instead of courts. Its growth is due to increase in government functions. Welfare state has expanded activities. Technical nature of disputes. Experts are needed. Tax, labor, environment. Delay in courts. Courts are overburdened with cases. Cheap and speedy justice. Tribunals provide faster decisions. Flexibility in procedure. Less formal than courts. Right pointing backhand index. Thus, tribunals develop to reduce burden on courts and provide efficient justice. C. Characteristics of administrative tribunals. Times specialized bodies deal with specific subject matters. Times quasi-judicial nature. Not courts but perform judicial functions. Times less formal procedure, not strictly bound by civil procedure code. Times expert members include technical experts. Times speedy and economical justice. Times follow natural justice, fair hearing, no bias. Times limited jurisdiction, only specific types of disputes. Difference between administrative tribunals and courts. Basis: administrative tribunals, courts. Nature: quasi-judicial, judicial. Procedure: flexible, strict, CPC, CRPC. Expertise: technical experts included, mainly judges. Speed: faster, slower due to backlog. Cost: less expensive, more expensive. Jurisdiction: limited, specific, general. Appeal: limited, appeal, full appeal system. Right pointing backhand index. Simple point. Courts are general justice bodies, tribunals are specialized and faster. E. Case study. Simple explanation. L. Chandra Kumar v. Union of India. Facts. The law said decisions of tribunals cannot be challenged in high courts. Issue: whether tribunals can replace courts completely. Judgment: Supreme Court held that judicial review by high courts and Supreme Court is essential and cannot be removed. Impact: tribunals are useful but courts remain superior authorities. Right pointing backhand index. Simple meaning: tribunals can decide cases, but courts have final control. F. Conclusion. Administrative tribunals are important for modern governance. They provide expert, fast and economical justice, but they are not a complete substitute for courts. Courts still supervise them to protect justice. A public corporation is a statutory body created by a special act of the legislature to carry out specific public or commercial functions. It is owned by the government but operates like a separate legal entity with its own rights and duties. In simple words, it is a government-owned organization created for public service but working with business-like efficiency. Example: Life Insurance Corporation, LIC, Food Corporation of India, FCI. 2. Importance of public corporation. Public corporations play a very important role in modern governance and economy. Times they provide essential services like insurance, transport, electricity, food supply, etc. Times they reduce the burden on government departments by handling commercial activities. Times they help in economic development by promoting industries and infrastructure. Times they ensure public welfare instead of focusing only on profit. Times they prevent monopolies and ensure fair competition in the market. Times they provide employment opportunities to people. In simple terms, they balance public interest and business efficiency. 3. Features, characteristics of public corporation. The main features are: Times statutory creation, created by a special act of parliament or state legislature. Times separate legal entity, it has its own identity separate from the government. It can sue and be sued. Times government ownership, fully or mostly owned by the government. Times financial independence, it has its own budget, income, and expenditure system. Times operational flexibility, free from strict government rules, so decisions can be taken quickly. Times public accountability, answerable to parliament and public authorities. Times management by board, managed by a board of directors appointed by the government. Times service motive, focuses more on public welfare than profit maximization. Liabilities of public corporation. Liability means legal responsibility. Public corporations have different types of liabilities. Times contractual liability, they are liable for contracts made in their name like any private company. Times tortious liability, they are responsible for wrongful acts, negligence, damage, etc., committed by their employees. Times statutory liability, they must follow the provisions of the act under which they are created. Times financial liability, they are responsible for managing public funds properly. Times limited government liability, generally, the government is not liable for their acts unless expressly stated. In short, public corporations are legally responsible for their actions like a private entity. 5. Case study, simple explanation. Case, LIC of India versus Consumer Dispute. A person took an insurance policy from LIC. Due to some mistake by LIC officials, the claim was rejected. The consumer filed a complaint. The court held LIC responsible and ordered compensation. Meaning in simple terms, even though LIC is a government corporation, it cannot escape liability. If it makes a mistake, it must pay compensation like any private company. This case shows that public corporations are accountable and responsible for their actions. 6. Conclusion. Public corporations are an important part of administrative law. They combine the advantages of government control and business efficiency. They serve public interest while maintaining flexibility. However, they must act responsibly because they are accountable to law and society. Public corporations are autonomous bodies, but they are not completely free. Since they use public money and serve public interest, different types of control are exercised over them to prevent misuse of power. In simple words, control means checking and regulating the working of public corporations to ensure honesty, efficiency, and accountability. Control is mainly exercised in 3 ways. Times parliamentary control, by legislature. Times executive control, by government. Times judicial control, by courts. There is also an important stage called preliminary control, control before formation or starting of operations. 2. Preliminary control, initial control. Preliminary control means control exercised before the public corporation starts functioning. Main features. Times creation by law. A public corporation is created only through a special act passed by parliament or state legislature. Times define objectives. The act clearly defines its powers, functions, and limits. Times capital structure. Government decides how much money will be invested. Times rules and regulations. The act lays down rules regarding management and operation. Times appointment of officials. Government decides the structure of the board and appoints key officials. Importance. This control ensures that the corporation starts on a proper legal and administrative foundation. It prevents confusion and misuse of power from the beginning. Simple example. Before establishing LIC, the government passed a law specifying its duties, powers, and structure. This is preliminary control. 3. Judicial control, Control by courts. Judicial control means control exercised by courts to ensure that public corporations act according to law. Main features. Times courts check legality of actions of public corporations. Times if a corporation acts beyond its powers, ultra vires, courts can stop it. Times courts protect fundamental rights of citizens. Times courts can give remedies like compensation or orders. Methods of judicial control. Times writs, like mandamus, certiorari, prohibition. Times judicial review, examining legality of decisions. Times suits for damages, compensation. Grounds of judicial control. Times abuse of power. Times violation of law. Times negligence or wrongful act. Times violation of natural justice, fair hearing. Simple example, case idea. If a public corporation unfairly cancels a contract without giving a hearing, the affected person can go to court. The court may cancel that decision and order fair treatment. Importance. Judicial control protects citizens from misuse of power and ensures rule of law. 4 other controls, brief mention. Times parliamentary control, through questions, debates, reports, and audits. Times executive control, through government directions, appointment of officials, and policy decisions. 5. Conclusion. Control over public corporations is necessary because they deal with public money and services. Preliminary control ensures proper formation, while judicial control ensures lawful functioning. Together, they maintain transparency, accountability, and efficiency. Delegated legislation means laws made by administrative authorities, like ministers, departments, agencies, under powers given to them by the legislature, parliament or state legislature. Example. Parliament passes a law on environmental protection. Then the government department makes rules about pollution limits, procedures, penalties, etc. These rules are delegated legislation. 2. Need importance of delegated legislation. Delegated legislation is necessary because times Parliament does not have enough time to make detailed laws on every issue. Times technical matters require expert knowledge. Times flexibility is needed to change rules quickly as per situations. Times it helps in efficient administration. In short, it saves time and makes laws more practical. 3. Extent of delegation in India. How much power can be delegated? In India, the legislature can delegate its lawmaking power, but not completely. Key principle. Essential legislative functions cannot be delegated. Meaning, Parliament must decide the basic policy, purpose, and framework of the law. Only minor details and implementation can be delegated. 4. What can be delegated? The legislature can delegate times making detailed rules and regulations, times fixing dates for enforcement of law, times filling in technical details, times framing procedures, times adapting laws to local conditions, times implementing and enforcing provisions. 5. What cannot be delegated? The legislature cannot delegate times essential legislative function, basic policy and principles. Times complete lawmaking power without guidelines. Times power that leads to arbitrary or uncontrolled authority. 6. Judicial view. Important principle. Indian courts have clearly stated limits on delegation. Conclusion. Delegated legislation is an important part of modern governance. It helps in efficient and flexible lawmaking. However, in India, the legislature cannot give away its core powers. It must always retain control over policy and principles while delegating only details. Factors leading to growth of delegated legislation in India. Delegated legislation has expanded rapidly in India due to practical needs of modern governance. The main factors are time's pressure on legislature. Parliament has limited time and cannot handle detailed lawmaking for every subject. Time's technical complexity. Modern laws, environment, telecom, banking require expert knowledge which administrators possess. Time's welfare state concept. India is a welfare state, so government performs many functions: health, education, industry, increasing need for detailed rules. Time's need for flexibility. Rules must be changed quickly according to changing conditions, which is easier through delegated legislation. Time's emergency situations. During emergencies, war, pandemic, economic crisis, quick decisions are required. Time's local needs. Different regions require different rules. Delegated legislation allows adaptation. Time's experimentation. Government can test policies through rules and modify them if needed. In simple terms, growth is due to increase in government functions and complexity of modern society. 2. Advantages of delegated legislation. Delegated legislation has several benefits. Time saves time of Parliament. Legislature focuses on important policies while details are handled by authorities. Time's expert knowledge. Rules are made by specialists, so they are more practical and effective. Time's flexibility. Easy to amend rules without passing a new law. Time's quick action. Immediate response to urgent situations. Time's detailed rules. Helps in proper implementation of laws. Time's convenience. Reduces burden on legislative process. Thus, it makes administration efficient and responsive. 3. Delegated legislation is inevitable. Critical examination. Meaning of the statement. Inevitable means unavoidable. The statement suggests that delegated legislation is necessary in modern governance. Arguments in favor. Why it is inevitable. Time's modern state activities are vast and complex. Time's legislature cannot manage all details. Time's technical and specialized knowledge is required. Time's quick decisions are needed in changing conditions. Times ensures smooth implementation of laws. Arguments against criticism. Time's risk of misuse of power. Authorities may act arbitrarily. Time's weak parliamentary control. Legislature may lose control over lawmaking. Time's lack of transparency. Rules may be made without proper discussion. Time's threat to democracy. Unelected officials get lawmaking power. Time's possibility of overdelegation. Legislature may transfer too much power. 4. Balanced view. Conclusion of critical analysis. Delegated legislation is practically unavoidable in today's complex administrative system. However, it should not be unlimited. Proper safeguards are necessary. Time's clear policy and guidelines by legislature. Time's effective parliamentary control. Time's strong judicial review. Time's transparency and accountability. Final conclusion. Delegated legislation is indeed inevitable, but it must be carefully controlled to prevent misuse and protect democratic principles. Conditional legislation means a law in which the legislature makes a complete law but leaves its operation or application dependent on the fulfillment of certain conditions, to be decided by an administrative authority. In simple words, the law is already made by the legislature, but it will come into force or apply only when the government decides that certain conditions are satisfied. Example: a law is passed stating that it will apply in a particular area only when the government issues a notification. The government does not make the law, it only decides when and where it will apply. 2 key features of conditional legislation. Times the law is complete in itself. Times legislature decides policy, rules, and framework fully. Times authority only decides when, where, and how the law will apply. Times no power to make new rules or change the law. Times it is more about execution than lawmaking. 3. Meaning of delegated legislation. Brief recap. Delegated legislation means lawmaking power given by the legislature to administrative authorities to make rules, regulations, or bylaws for implementing the main law. In simple words, legislature makes the main law and gives power to authorities to fill in the details. 4. Difference between conditional legislation and delegated legislation. Basis: conditional legislation, delegated legislation. Nature: law is complete, law is incomplete. Role of authority: applies the law, makes rules, laws. Power given: limited, only execution; wider, rulemaking power. Legislative function: fully performed by legislature, partly delegated. Discretion: limited discretion, wider discretion. Example: deciding date, area of enforcement, making detailed rules and procedures. Conclusion. Conditional legislation and delegated legislation are different in nature. In conditional legislation, the legislature does all lawmaking work and leaves only application to authorities. In delegated legislation, the legislature transfers some lawmaking power. Delegated legislation means rules made by administrative authorities under powers given by Parliament. Since these authorities are not elected, it is necessary to control their powers. Legislative control ensures that such rules do not go beyond the intention of Parliament. In simple words, Parliament keeps a check so that government does not misuse its rule-making power. 2. Parliamentary, legislative, control over delegated legislation. Parliamentary control means supervision by Parliament over rules made by the executive. A. Control at the time of passing the law, pre-delegation control. Times Parliament defines policy, purpose, and limits of delegation. Times it gives clear guidelines to authorities. Times it decides how much power is to be delegated. Whitewright pointing backhand index. This ensures that essential legislative functions are not delegated. B. Control after the law is made, post-delegation control. Laying procedure, most important method. Rules made by the executive are placed before Parliament. Types. Times simple laying, rules are laid before Parliament for information. Times negative laying, rules become effective unless rejected by Parliament. Times affirmative laying, rules become effective only after approval of Parliament. Parliamentary committees. Times Committee on Subordinate Legislation examines whether rules go beyond powers, ultra vires, violate rights, are unreasonable. Times it submits reports and recommendations. Questions and discussions. Times members of Parliament can ask questions and raise debates regarding misuse of power, modification or annulment. Times Parliament can modify or cancel rules if they are improper. 3. Ambit, scope, of parliamentary control. The scope of parliamentary control includes times checking whether rules follow the Parent Act. Times ensuring policy of Parliament is not violated. Times preventing excessive delegation. Times maintaining transparency and accountability. Limitation. In practice, control is sometimes weak due to lack of time, technical complexity, and large number of rules. L. Judicial control over delegated legislation. Judicial control means supervision by courts to ensure legality of delegated legislation. Grounds of judicial review. Ultra vires, beyond powers. Times if rules exceed powers given by the Act, invalid. Times 2 types. Substantive ultra vires, beyond authority. Procedural ultra vires, procedure not followed. Violation of fundamental rights. Times if rules violate rights under Constitution struck down. Unreasonableness, arbitrary action. Times if rules are irrational or unfair. Malafide, bad faith. Times if power is used with wrong intention. Violation of natural justice. Times if rules deny fair hearing or fairness. 5. Methods used by courts. Times judicial review. Times writs, mandamus, certiorari, prohibition. Times declaration of invalidity. Simple example. If a rule unfairly restricts business without authority, court can declare it invalid. 6. Conclusion. Legislative and judicial controls together ensure that delegated legislation is used properly. Parliamentary control maintains political accountability, while judicial control ensures legality. Both are necessary to protect democracy and prevent misuse of power. Delegated legislation means laws made by the executive, government authorities, under powers given by the legislature. Since these authorities are not directly elected to make laws, their powers must be controlled. One important type of control is procedural control, which ensures that proper steps are followed while making such laws. Another important aspect is publication, because a law is useful only when people know about it. 1. Procedural control over delegated legislation meaning. Procedural control refers to the legal procedures and formalities that must be followed by the authority while making rules, regulations, or bylaws. If these procedures are not followed, the delegated legislation may become invalid. Purpose: to prevent misuse of power, to ensure transparency and fairness, to involve public participation, to maintain accountability of the executive. Main forms of procedural control. 1. Previous publication, pre-publication. Before final rules are made, a draft is published and the public is invited to give objections and suggestions. This ensures democratic participation and improves quality of law. 2. Consultation with experts or bodies. Sometimes the Parent Act requires consultation with experts, advisory boards, or interested parties. If such consultation is mandatory and not followed, the rules can be declared invalid. 3. Public participation. Citizens, organizations, and stakeholders can express their views. This prevents arbitrary decisions and helps authorities understand practical problems. 4. Laying before legislature, laying procedure. Rules must be placed before Parliament or state legislature. There are 3 types. Simple laying, for information. Negative resolution, rules can be annulled. Affirmative resolution, approval required. This ensures legislative supervision. 5. Approval or confirmation. Some rules require prior or subsequent approval of the legislature or government authority. Without approval, such rules cannot come into force. Publication in Official Gazette. Rules must be officially published so that people are aware of them. Without publication, rules generally cannot be enforced. Importance of procedural control. Procedural control acts as a safeguard against arbitrary exercise of power. It ensures that delegated legislation is made in a transparent, fair, and participative manner. 2. Provisions relating to publication of delegated legislation. Why publication is necessary? A law cannot bind people unless it is known to them. The principle, ignorance of law is no excuse, applies only when the law is properly published. Key provisions. 1. Publication in Official Gazette. Most delegated legislation must be published in the Official Gazette. It is the most authentic and recognized form of publication. 2. Mandatory versus directory requirement. If publication is mandatory, non-publication makes the law invalid. If it is directory, minor defects may not invalidate the law. 3. Mode of publication. Publication may be through official gazette, government websites, newspapers, in some cases. 4. Date of enforcement. The law comes into force either from the date of publication or from a specified future date. 5. Accessibility to public. The law must be reasonably accessible so that people can know and follow it. Case study, simple explanation. Harla v. State of Rajasthan, 1951. In this case, a law was made but not properly published. The government tried to enforce it against the public. Court's decision. The Supreme Court held that a law cannot be enforced unless it is properly published. People cannot follow a law which they do not know. Conclusion. Procedural control and publication are essential safeguards in delegated legislation. Procedural control ensures that rules are made properly and fairly, while publication ensures that people are aware of those rules. Together, they protect citizens from misuse of power and strengthen the rule of law. The Constitution of India establishes a system where the legislature makes laws, the executive implements them, and the judiciary interprets them. To maintain balance and protect citizens' rights, the judiciary has the power of judicial review. Along with this, the courts in India have developed the idea of judicial activism, where judges play an active role in ensuring justice and protecting fundamental rights. 1. Concept of judicial review in India. Meaning. Judicial review means the power of courts to examine the validity of laws and actions of the government. If any law or action violates the Constitution, the court can declare it unconstitutional and void. Simple understanding. If the government makes a law that goes against the Constitution, the court can cancel it. Constitutional basis. Judicial review is not mentioned in one single article but is derived from several provisions. Article 13. Laws inconsistent with fundamental rights are void. Article 32. Right to constitutional remedies, Supreme Court. Article 226. High Court's power to issue writs. Article 136, 141, 142. Additional powers of Supreme Court. These provisions make judicial review a basic feature of the Constitution. Scope of judicial review. Courts can review legislative actions, laws made by Parliament or state legislatures, executive actions, decisions of government authorities, administrative actions. Grounds of judicial review. Violation of fundamental rights, lack of jurisdiction, error of law, abuse of power, violation of Constitution. Case study. Keswananda Bharti v. State of Kerala. In this famous case, the Supreme Court held that Parliament can amend the Constitution but cannot destroy its basic structure. Simple explanation. The court said that some core features like democracy, rule of law, and judicial review cannot be removed even by Parliament. Importance. This case made judicial review very powerful and protected the Constitution from misuse. Importance of judicial review. Protects fundamental rights. Maintains supremacy of Constitution. Checks misuse of power. Ensures rule of law. 2. Judicial activism, essay. Meaning judicial activism means a situation where courts actively intervene in matters to ensure justice, even if it involves stepping into areas usually handled by the legislature or executive. Origin and development. Judicial activism developed in India mainly after the 1970s, especially through public interest litigation, PIL. Courts started allowing even ordinary citizens to approach them for the welfare of society. Features of judicial activism. Relaxation of rules of locus standi. Anyone can file a case. Focus on social justice. Protection of weaker sections. Creative interpretation of law. Expansion of fundamental rights. Areas of judicial activism. Environmental protection. Human rights. Prison reforms. Women and child welfare. Corruption control. Case study. Maneka Gandhi v. Union of India. The Supreme Court expanded the meaning of right to life and personal liberty under Article 21. Importance. This case is a major example of judicial activism because the court broadens citizens' rights. Advantages of judicial activism. Protects rights of common people. Provides justice where laws are silent. Keeps government accountable. Promotes social welfare. Criticism of judicial activism. May violate separation of powers. Courts may overstep their limits. Risk of judicial overreach. Unelected judges influencing policy. Judicial activism versus judicial restraint. Judicial activism means active role of courts, while judicial restraint means courts should limit their interference and respect decisions of other branches. Conclusion. Judicial review and judicial activism are essential features of the Indian legal system. Judicial review ensures that laws and actions follow the Constitution, while judicial activism ensures that justice is delivered even in difficult situations. The Constitution of India provides powerful remedies to protect fundamental rights through writs under Articles 32 and 226. These writs are issued by the Supreme Court and High Courts to control administrative actions and ensure justice. The 5 main writs are habeas corpus, mandamus, certiorari, prohibition and quo warranto. 1. Writ of habeas corpus. Meaning. Habeas corpus means produce the body. It is issued when a person is illegally detained. Purpose. To protect personal liberty and prevent unlawful detention. Example. If police arrest a person without legal reason and keep him in custody, his family can approach the court for habeas corpus. The court will order the authority to produce the person and justify the detention. Case study. ADM Jabalpur v. Shivkant Shukla. During emergency, many people were detained. The issue was whether habeas corpus could be used. Though the court initially restricted it, later this view was criticized and personal liberty was strongly protected in later cases. Simple understanding. No one can be kept in jail without legal reason. 2. Writ of mandamus. Meaning. Mandamus means we command. It is issued to order a public authority to perform its legal duty. Nature and scope. Issued against public officials, government, corporations. Ensures performance of public duty. Cannot be issued against private individuals. Cannot be issued against the president or governors for their official acts. Who can apply? Any person whose legal right is affected. Even public interest cases, PIL. Example. If a government officer refuses to issue a license despite fulfilling all conditions, the court can issue mandamus directing him to act. 3. Writ of certiorari. Meaning certiorari means to be informed. It is issued to quash an order of a lower court or tribunal. Nature and scope. Issued by higher courts to lower courts tribunals. Used to correct jurisdictional errors. Can quash illegal or unjust decisions. Applies to judicial and quasi-judicial authorities. When issued against administrative tribunals. When tribunal acts without jurisdiction. When it exceeds its powers. When it violates natural justice. When there is an error of law. Example. If a tribunal gives a decision without hearing one party, the court can cancel that decision through certiorari. 4. Writ of prohibition. Meaning. Prohibition means to forbid. It is issued by a higher court to stop a lower court or tribunal from proceeding with a case. Nature. Preventive in nature. Issued before decision is made. Stops excess or misuse of jurisdiction. Example. If a tribunal tries to decide a matter outside its authority, the higher court can prohibit it. 5. Writ of quo warranto. Meaning. Quo warranto means, by what authority? Definition. It is issued to question the legality of a person's claim to a public office. Purpose. Prevent illegal occupation of public office. Ensure that only qualified persons hold office. Example. If a person becomes a university vice-chancellor without required qualifications, the court can ask under what authority he holds the position. Conclusion. Writs are powerful tools for protecting rights and controlling administrative actions. Habeas corpus protects liberty, mandamus ensures duty, certiorari corrects errors, prohibition prevents misuse of power, and quo warranto checks illegal occupation of office. Together, they strengthen the rule of law in India. In a modern welfare state, the government performs many functions for the benefit of citizens. With increasing powers of administration, there is also a risk of misuse, delay, and corruption. To control such problems and protect citizens, the institution of Ombudsman has developed. Definition of Ombudsman. An ombudsman is an independent public authority appointed to investigate complaints of citizens against government officials and administrative agencies. Simple meaning. It is a person who acts as a watchdog of administration and helps people when they face injustice from government authorities. The concept originated in Sweden in 1809 and later spread to many countries, including India, in the form of Lokpal and Lokayukta. Features of Ombudsman. Independent and impartial authority. Appointed by government but works without interference. Investigates complaints against public officials. Provides quick and inexpensive remedy. Focuses on administrative justice. Functions of Ombudsman. Receives complaints from citizens. Investigates maladministration, delay, corruption, abuse of power. Recommends corrective actions. Ensures fairness and transparency. Suggests reforms in administration. Contribution of Ombudsman in a welfare state. 1. Protection of citizens' rights. In a welfare state, citizens depend heavily on government services. Ombudsman protects them from injustice, harassment, and unfair treatment. 2. Control over administrative abuse. It acts as a check on misuse of power by government officials and reduces corruption. 3. Ensures good governance. By correcting administrative errors, it improves efficiency and accountability in governance. 4. Provides easy and cheap justice. Unlike courts, the Ombudsman procedure is simple, informal, and less costly. Even a common person can approach it. 5. Builds public confidence. People gain trust in government when they know there is an authority to hear their complaints. 6. Promotes transparency and accountability. Government officials become more careful and responsible in their actions. 7. Helps in administrative reforms. The Ombudsman suggests improvements in laws and procedures to prevent future problems. Example, India context. In India, institutions like Lokpal and Lokayukta perform similar functions by investigating corruption complaints against public servants. Evaluation, critical view. Advantages: quick remedy, independent functioning, citizen-friendly, reduces burden on courts. Limitations: recommendations are often not binding. Limited powers in some countries. Dependence on government for implementation. Conclusion: the Ombudsman plays a vital role in a welfare state by ensuring that administration remains fair, transparent, and accountable. It protects citizens from injustice and strengthens democracy. However, its effectiveness depends on the powers given to it and the willingness of authorities to implement its recommendations. To control corruption and ensure accountability in public administration, India established institutions like Lokpal at the union level and Lokayukta at the state level under the Lokpal and Lokayuktas Act 2013. These bodies act as anti-corruption authorities for investigating complaints against public officials. 1. Meaning of Lokayukta and its jurisdiction. Meaning: Lokayukta is a state-level independent authority appointed to investigate allegations of corruption, misuse of power, and maladministration by public servants. Simple understanding: it is like a watchdog at the state level that checks whether government officials are working honestly. Jurisdiction of Lokayukta. Jurisdiction means the area and persons over which Lokayukta has authority. Lokayukta generally covers Chief Minister, in some states with limitations, ministers and members of state legislature, government officials and employees, local bodies and public authorities. Matters covered: corruption, abuse of power, delay in administrative work, unfair or arbitrary decisions. Limitations: cannot interfere in judicial decisions, may not have power over private individuals. Powers vary from state to state. 2. Main provisions of Lokpal and Lokayuktas Act 2013. The Lokpal and Lokayuktas Act 2013 was enacted to create a strong mechanism to deal with corruption at both central and state levels. 1. Establishment of Lokpal. Lokpal is set up at the central level. It consists of a chairperson and members, judicial and non-judicial. 2. Composition. Chairperson, former Chief Justice of India or Supreme Court judge or eminent person. Members, maximum 8, 50% judicial members. At least 50% members from SC Cent OBC women minorities. 3. Appointment process. Appointed by the President. Selection committee includes Prime Minister, Speaker of Lok Sabha, Leader of Opposition, Chief Justice of India or nominee, eminent jurist. 4. Jurisdiction of Lokpal. Covers Prime Minister with some restrictions. Ministers. Members of Parliament. Group A, B, C, D officers. Certain NGOs receiving government funds. 5. Inquiry and investigation. Lokpal can order preliminary inquiry. Investigation conducted by agencies like CBI. Time-bound process. 6. Prosecution powers. Lokpal can recommend prosecution. Special courts are established for speedy trial. 7. Lokayukta in states. Act requires states to establish Lokayukta. Structure and powers decided by state laws. 8. Declaration of assets. Public servants must declare their assets and liabilities. 9. Protection for whistleblowers. Provides safeguards to persons who expose corruption. 10. Time-bound disposal. Inquiry and investigation must be completed within a fixed time. Importance of the Act. Strengthens anti-corruption system. Promotes transparency. ensures accountability of public officials, builds public trust in government. Conclusion. Lokayukta and Lokpal are important institutions for controlling corruption in India. While Lokayukta works at the state level, Lokpal functions at the central level. The 2013 Act provides a strong legal framework to ensure honest governance, though its effectiveness depends on proper implementation. The Central Vigilance Commission, CVC, is the top anti-corruption body in India. It supervises vigilance, anti-corruption, activities in central government departments, public sector undertakings, and other organizations. In simple words, CVC works like a watchdog to check corruption and ensure honesty in government work. 2. Legal status and establishment. The CVC was set up in 1964 based on the recommendations of the Santhanam Committee. It was given statutory status by the Central Vigilance Commission Act, 2003. It is an independent body, not controlled by any ministry, ensuring impartial functioning. 3. Composition, structure. The Commission consists of 1. Central Vigilance Commissioner, Chairperson. Not more than 2 Vigilance Commissioners, members. They are appointed by the President on the recommendation of a committee consisting of Prime Minister, Chairman, Home Minister, Leader of Opposition in Lok Sabha. 4. Functions of CVC, main work. A. Supervision of investigation. CVC supervises the functioning of the Central Bureau of Investigation in corruption cases. B. Advisory role. It advises government departments on disciplinary matters against corrupt officials. C. Inquiry into complaints. Receives complaints related to corruption, misuse of power, and misconduct by public servants. D. Vigilance administration. Monitors vigilance activities in ministries, banks, and public sector units. E. Whistleblower protection. Protects individuals who report corruption under the whistleblower mechanism. F. System improvement. Suggests reforms to reduce corruption and improve transparency. 5. Powers of CVC. It has powers of a civil court while conducting inquiries. Can call for records, documents, and reports. However, its advice is generally recommendatory, not binding. 6. Role of CVC in governance. Promotes integrity and transparency in administration. Acts as a deterrent against corruption. Improves efficiency in public services. Case study, simple example. Case, Public Sector Bank Fraud Investigation. A complaint was received about irregularities in loan approvals in a public sector bank. The CVC referred the matter to the Central Bureau of Investigation, CBI. Investigation revealed that some officials had accepted bribes and violated rules. Based on CVC advice, strict disciplinary action was taken and guilty officers were punished. Simple understanding, CVC acted like a referee. It did not punish directly but ensured proper investigation and fair action. 8. Limitations of CVC. It is mainly an advisory body. It cannot directly punish officials. Depends on other agencies like CBI for investigation. Delay in implementation of its recommendations sometimes reduces effectiveness. 9. Conclusion. The Central Vigilance Commission plays a very important role in controlling corruption and maintaining clean governance in India. Though it has some limitations, it acts as a strong moral and supervisory authority ensuring accountability in public administration. The doctrine of promissory estoppel means that if a person makes a promise to another person, and the other person relies on that promise and acts upon it, then the person who made the promise cannot go back on it, even if there is no formal contract. 2. Definition. Promissory estoppel is a principle of equity, fairness, which prevents a person from withdrawing a promise when it would be unjust to do so. 3. Essential elements, main conditions. For this doctrine to apply, the following must be present. Clear and definite promise. A promise must be made clearly. Reliance on promise. The other person must believe and rely on it. Change in position. The person must act or suffer loss based on the promise. Injustice. If withdrawn, it would be unfair to allow the promiser to go back. 4. Example, easy understanding. A promises B that he will not charge rent for 1 year. B, relying on this, spends money on repairing the house. Later A demands rent. Here, A cannot demand rent because B acted based on A's promise. This is promissory estoppel. 5. Application in India. In India, this doctrine is recognized and applied by courts to ensure fairness. It is often used against the government also when the government makes promises and later tries to withdraw them. Important case law. Union of India v. Anglo-Afghan agencies. The Supreme Court held that the government cannot go back on its promise if people have acted on it. Motilal Padampat Sugar Mills v. State of Uttar Pradesh established that promissory estoppel applies even without a formal contract. 6. Scope, where it applies. Used in contract law and administrative law. Applies against private individuals and government. Ensures justice and prevents fraud or unfairness. Conclusion. The doctrine of promissory estoppel is an important legal principle that promotes honesty and fairness. It ensures that promises are respected and people are not harmed due to false assurances. Principles of natural justice are basic rules of fairness which must be followed by courts, tribunals, and administrative authorities while making decisions. In simple words, हर फैसला बिना पक्षपात और दोनों तरफ को सुनकर ही होना चाहिए. Main principles. There are two core principles. Audi alteram partem, here the other side. Nemo judex in causa sua, no one should be a judge in his own case. 2. Against whom these principles can be enforced. Natural justice applies against administrative authorities, government departments, tribunals and quasi-judicial bodies, public officials exercising power. It applies whenever a decision affects the rights, liberty, or property of a person. However, it generally does not apply in purely legislative actions. Cases of urgency, emergency situations, where law expressly excludes it. 3. Principle of Audi alteram partem, here the other side, meaning no person should be condemned or punished without being given a fair opportunity to present his case. Essential elements. Notice of charges. Opportunity to be heard. Right to present evidence. Right to cross-examine, in some cases. Reasoned decision. Case laws. A.K. Kripak v. Union of India established that natural justice applies to administrative actions also. Maneka Gandhi v. Union of India held that fair procedure is part of Article 21, hearing is essential before affecting rights. Ridge v. Baldwin, dismissal without hearing was held invalid. Example: if a government employee is dismissed without giving him a chance to explain, the decision is invalid. 4. Nemo judex in causa sua, no one can be judge in his own case. Meaning a person who has an interest in a case cannot decide it, because it may lead to bias. Types of bias. Personal bias. Pecuniary, financial, bias. Official bias. Case laws. Dimes v. Grand Junction Canal decision was invalid because the judge had financial interest. State of UP v. Mohad. No, bias violates natural justice. Bias means a situation where a decision maker is not neutral and has a personal interest, prejudice, or inclination towards one side. In simple words, जब फैसला लेने वाला व्यक्ति ऑलरेडी किसी एक साइड को फेवर करता हो. 2. Doctrine of nemo judex in causa sua. This Latin maxim means, no one should be a judge in his own case. Explanation: if a person has any interest, personal, financial, or official, in a case, he cannot decide that case because his decision may not be fair. 3. Rules against bias, main types of bias. 1. Personal bias: when the decision maker has a personal relationship, friendship, enmity, family relation with any party. Example: a judge deciding a case involving his relative. 2. Pecuniary, financial bias: when the decision maker has financial interest in the outcome. Even a small financial interest is enough to disqualify. Case: Dimes v. Grand Junction Canal. Judge had shares in the company, decision was held invalid. 3. Subject matter bias: when the authority has prior involvement in the same case. Example: a person who investigated a case later acts as judge. 4. Departmental bias occurs when officials in the same department act as complainant and judge. Case: A.K. Kripak v. Union of India. Selection committee member was also a candidate, bias was established. 5. Policy notion bias: when the authority has already formed a fixed opinion based on policy or prior views. 4. Test of bias: how courts decide bias. Courts apply the test whether there is a reasonable likelihood of bias. It is not necessary to prove actual bias, even the possibility or likelihood is enough. 5. Importance of rule against bias: ensures fairness and impartiality, maintains public confidence in justice system, prevents misuse of power, protects individual rights. 7. Conclusion: the doctrine of nemo judex in causa sua is a fundamental rule of natural justice. It ensures that decisions are taken without prejudice or personal interest. Rules against bias protect fairness. A reasoned decision means a decision which clearly states the reasons or grounds on which it is based. It is also called a speaking order. In simple words, फैसला सिर्फ दिया ना जाए, बल्कि उसका रीजन भी बताया जाए. 2. What does a reasoned decision contain? A proper reasoned decision includes facts of the case, issues involved, evidence considered, findings of the authority, clear reasons for the conclusion. 3. Importance of reasoned decision. Giving reasons is very important because ensures fairness and transparency, prevents arbitrary, manmani decisions, helps parties understand why they won or lost, makes judicial review possible, higher courts can examine the decision, builds public confidence in administration. 4. Is it essential for quasi-judicial bodies and tribunals? Yes, it is essential. Quasi-judicial bodies and tribunals are required to give reasoned decisions. Why? They decide matters affecting rights of individuals. They must follow principles of natural justice. A decision without reasons is considered invalid and arbitrary. 5. Judicial view, case laws. Siemens Engineering v. Union of India. Supreme Court held that every quasi-judicial authority must give reasons for its decision. Kranti Associates v. Masood Ahmad Khan. Court emphasized that recording reasons is a part of natural justice and essential for fairness. Maneka Gandhi v. Union of India. Established that procedure must be fair, just, and reasonable, which includes giving reasons. 6. Exceptions, limited situations. In some cases, detailed reasons may not be required. Administrative decisions of routine nature. Matters of national security or urgency, where law expressly excludes giving reasons. However, even in such cases, courts prefer that at least minimal reasons should be given. 7. Conclusion. A reasoned decision is a vital part of natural justice. It ensures accountability, fairness, and transparency in decision-making. Therefore, it is essential for quasi-judicial bodies and tribunal. Liability of the state means the responsibility of the government for wrong acts, torts, or breach of agreements, contracts. In simple words, अगर सरकार या उसके ऑफिसर्स गलत काम करें या कॉन्ट्रैक्ट तोड़ दे, तो क्या सरकार जिम्मेदार होगी? Part 1. Liability of state in torts. 2. Meaning of tort liability. A tort is a civil wrong, like negligence, wrongful act, for which compensation can be claimed. 3. Historical background. In ancient law, the principle was, the king can do no wrong. But in modern India, the state can be held liable in certain cases. 4. Sovereign versus non-sovereign functions. The liability of state depends on the nature of function. A. Sovereign functions, no liability. These are functions related to governance and authority of the state. Case, Kasturi Lal v. State of Uttar Pradesh. Police lost seized gold, court held state not liable because it was a sovereign function. B. Non-sovereign functions, liability exists. These are commercial or welfare activities. Case, State of Rajasthan v. Vidyavati. Government driver caused accident, state held liable. 5. Present position in India. Courts are moving towards holding the state liable even in more cases, especially where fundamental rights are violated. Case, Neelbati Behera v. State of Urus. Compensation granted for custodial death, state held liable. Part 2. Liability of state in contracts. 6. Constitutional provision. State liability in contracts is governed by Article 299 of the Constitution of India. 7. Essential requirements of valid government contract. For a contract with the government to be valid, must be in writing, must be made in the name of the President or Governor, must be executed by an authorized person. 8. Effect of non-compliance. If these conditions are not fulfilled, the contract becomes void. The government is not liable. Conclusion. The liability of the state in torts and contracts ensures accountability of government actions. While tort liability is still limited due to the concept of sovereign